One, are you aware of the choice? Second, are you in alignment to make the choice that you want? And three, are you clear on it, what it is that you want?
Absolutely.
Actually, you have a really cool exercise for this.
The purpose of this exercise is to figure out, it's an easy way to make a decision. And the first thing is to ask, what do I want? You need to understand that low rates actually scare off that high quality client. And it's because they understand that with the higher price tag comes the better service. So if those pieces are confused, that's where you're confusing your potential clients. And a confused mind always says no.
Yeah, absolutely, because then you confuse them and they don't really know.
If I were having this conversation with someone, I would ask them just straight out, like, why don't you want it?
Hey everybody, Melissa here from Thinkific. Now, whether you're a coach, consultant, course creator, or any person who's ever tried to make money on their own, almost everyone runs into the same problem at the start. How do I price my services? Now, if you price too low, you're scared that it might devalue your offer. You price too high, well, you might scare people away. Or you do raise your prices, but it feels wrong, it feels icky, it feels bad. And I know this because I've actually tried to start my own coaching business too. So how do you really charge what you're worth? Not just charge for it, but like feel good and believe in what you're charging. So today we have invited Latisha Styles, entrepreneur, success coach, and all-around stubborn believer in manifestation. She's the founder and CEO of You've Got Clients. She's helped some of her clients make over $500,000, and she's actually helped them find the confidence to also command those rates. She's here today to help us answer some of those questions. You can also find her on Instagram at Latisha Styles TV. Hello, Latisha.
Hey there, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love that you're here. Thanks for joining us on one of our first shows. So now you've manifested like your perfect husband. You're a fitness model. You make six figures. And you've helped other people make six figures, like one who's actually made 18K in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But this didn't happen overnight, right? Like, how did all of this start?
Well, it's a fairly long story, so I'll try to give you the truncated version of it. But essentially, I am a graduate of the greatest recession since the Great Depression, right? So I graduated into the Great Recession. It took me 11 months to find a job. I was putting out applications. And during that process, I came away with some new thoughts. And what I realized was that I never wanted to be dependent on anyone else for my income, for the ability to make money. And so that's what sort of started my online journey. I started as a personal finance blogger. Then I started helping business owners with their content and helping them with blogs. And then I started teaching workshops online to tell more people about some of the things that I had learned. And that led down the road of me creating a coaching and consulting and marketing consulting business, which is what I do now, helping clients with their online marketing, helping them to raise their rates, and helping them to really build systems that work for them so that they can operate in their passion.
Right. That's amazing. Like, that's quite a journey. And it's cool that you started, you made a decision for yourself. Like, I don't want to depend on anybody. And you went out and you did it. I think a lot of people have that thought for themselves as well. Like, this is where I want to go. But you ended up going there. I read in some of your profile that like you actually started with like 6 email subscribers. Yep. and you're not there anymore, right? So like, what was actually that turning point though for you? Like what changed for you to, start getting to where you are right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I first started, like I said, I was kind of doing the personal finance blogging. I actually quit so I had finally gotten a job after sending out all those resumes. And then I was in that job and starting my career path for, a couple years. And I realized that I still am and was an entrepreneur at heart. So I knew I needed to kind of do my own thing. So I ended up leaving that job, taking my business full time. And it didn't quite go as well as I was expecting it to go. I was, doing a lot of freelance work here and there. And unfortunately, after a couple of months, my husband came to me and he was like, hey, dear, I know, we talked about you, trying to, go out, step out on your own, but, it's time to get a job, right? It's clearly it's not going the way you want it to go. And so honestly, like I was devastated. I felt like a failure. I felt like, this was something that I was trying to make work and I just couldn't make work. And as I went back to that, to corporate America and went into that job, I cried like for the first 3 days, like as I was going in, and then finally I had like this moment of resolve where I said, I only fail if I quit, and so I'm not going to quit. And instead, I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna, do whatever it takes, as whatever it takes, as much as it takes, until it takes. And so at that point, I decided to essentially burn the bridges. I quit that job again. So now I was out on my own again. And that's when I started getting a couple of clients, business owners who I was teaching, not teaching, but like actually doing their content marketing for them. And I said, I'm just going to keep these clients, and I really don't care what has to happen in order for me to make this work, but I'm not going to have to go back to a job again. And that was at the end of 2015. And I've been self-employed since then. And it hasn't been an easy journey by any means, but it's one that's really taught me, like you said, stubborn believer in manifestation. I realized that when there's something that I set my mind to, as long as I don't quit and I don't give up, I will succeed. I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to do what I have to do in order to make it work.
That's really inspiring that you left the first time and your husband told you didn't work. And then you went to corporate and you just, it just felt wrong and you did it again. And that shows how much commitment you have to yourself to make it work. Like that is courageous. That's bold. That's very inspiring.
It was scary. It was very scary. But like I said, I knew that I was going to do, at that point, I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And, before I had tried to do a lot of like learning on my own. And that's when I finally decided to start like investing in myself and investing in mentors and learning from people who are already there. And that's what really allowed me to move forward so quickly.
Yeah, so that's the big question that I had was, you did it the first time and it wasn't working. You went back to corporate America and you did it the second time and it stuck and you decided to stay. And a lot of people are trying to make that shift themselves. So like, what do you think is not working for them there? And what worked for you? Like, what was the thing that made the second time work that the first time didn't work for?
Honestly, it was a huge mindset shift for me to value myself enough to spend money on myself from a personal development standpoint. So I had always been willing to spend money on myself for, honestly, like purses and shoes and things like that. I was, I never was stingy with money or spending money on myself. But when it came to things like courses or like paying for someone to show me what to do, there was like this mental block. And I know I would love to talk a little bit more about that, as well as like kind of some of the subconscious blocks that prevent people from succeeding. But for me, one of the big ones was addiction to struggle. And I was just really so stuck on, I was comfortable staying where I was, so comfortable that I wasn't willing to step out and take that action. And so when I did, the reason that it worked the second time, which is why I believe that it worked, is because I decided that I was worth it and I was willing to pay for shortcuts. And that's what I did. I found a mastermind. I bought a course, and I invested in a mentor to help me with mindset. Like whatever I felt like was the stopping point or block for me, I was like, let me find the person who knows what they're doing. Let me work with them so that I can move forward, because I never want to try to figure this out on my own. Even though I trust in myself, I know that I can get there faster with someone's help.
I love what you said about the addiction to struggle, because I think, could you just illustrate what a little bit of that might look like? Because I think a lot of people are struggling with that in their own way to success, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll use myself as an example, because like I said, this is kind of one of my subconscious blocks that I come around to as I continue to elevate. I see it over and over again, and I'm better equipped to deal with it as I continue moving through my journey. But one of the first examples I can provide is when I first graduated during the recession, I actually did get a job offer. And the initial job offer, I had an internship, and the initial job offer I turned down because it was in another state. And I remember thinking, well, this is just not 100% perfect. It's not exactly it. So I'm just not going to take this. 11 months, after that 11-month process, I was like, maybe I should have taken that job. And so that comfort with being okay with living on the edge, the addiction to struggle, was what caused me to decline that job offer and then struggle for 11 more months, which was me feeling comfortable with that struggle. And like I said, that's one that I noticed for myself. And whenever there's a subconscious block that you have, it's nothing that completely goes away. You deal with it at each level. As you continue to upgrade, you're just better equipped to deal with it. And it gets easier and easier to move past it.
I feel that in my life too. I feel like I'm constantly learning the same lessons. I'm like, didn't I work on you already? But I realize it's like at a different level. It's like, you beat this one, next boss.
Exactly.
I'm just waiting to get to like the final boss. Okay, I love what you said there. Thank you for that vulnerability. It's so interesting because, like you said, the struggle is to stay in comfort. So it's actually not like the proper struggle, because like there's a positive kind of a struggle. There's like a striving struggle too. But this is like the struggle, the addiction to struggle because you're comfortable in staying where you are, which is very interesting. Like,
absolutely,
understanding of that. Okay, I really wanted to go back to what you were talking about, subconscious blocks, because I love what you're saying here. This is like the main pillar point of everything. So a lot of people do things that they're supposed to do. They follow all the things, but they still don't, they still don't get the success. And you're saying it's because of the subconscious blocks.
Yeah, so there are actually 7 common subconscious blocks that I've identified. I won't list them all out now, but some of the most common ones are that addiction to struggle, fear of failure, fear of greatness. And as you recognize, which one you're really dealing with, and it could be one, it could be, a couple of them, then you learn to figure out how to work through them. So for me, and in particular, why I'm so passionate about working with clients to help them raise their rates and understand that, that self-worth conversation, is because one of the main areas that I see clients struggle with, and me as well, was feeling like I need to, charge what I'm worth versus charging what my services are worth. And that particular block, that particular mental conversation has a lot to do with the internal conversations of self-worth, and what we have to do and kind of what we have to work through is figure out and determine, like, what are your services actually worth, not what you're worth, because that journey of figuring out what your self-worth is, it might take you a little bit longer than you realize. And so we don't want to keep working on that and not be able to charge what we want to charge. Like, let's figure out what your services are worth. Then let's start working on that internal, those subconscious blocks, so that you can also raise your vibe to that level of where, you are worth more, and you're ready to really step into that power. So I hope I answered the question. I don't know, it might have been a little bit
longer. There's no right or wrong answer. It was a great, what I loved about that was there is an understanding where everyone says, charge your worth. And it's interesting because you're saying, no. It takes time to build your worth. Actually, I was going to say, like, that's a long, lifelong journey at some points for some people. So you want to focus on charging your services, the value that you provide. And it's not you as a person, because we tend to over-identify ourselves, right?
Exactly. And I also find that this happens a lot with women, a lot with minorities, and a lot of it is just internal conversations that we're having for ourselves, because, my degree was in finance, right? So being in the finance world, it's mostly dominated by men. And so I was around a lot of masculine energy. A lot of the conversations that I had with my college classmates. I learned how to assert myself and really how to, dominate a conversation if I needed to. And I find that, that has helped me as I move into, my career and as I'm doing what I do now. But I often see, like, you don't see a lot of women in finance, to be honest. Like I said, it's male dominated, but we're really good at it. We just haven't really, like, sometimes there's these internal conversations that we're having. So long story short, it's really more so about figuring out where your strengths and where your power is, which is why I like to create what I call power statements for myself. And that really helps me to start overcoming some of those subconscious blocks. And it really helps me to move into the right path of, building up my self-worth and, starting to narrow down and close that gap.
I like what you said. There's a power statement, and power statement is like not an affirmation, right?
Correct. So a lot of people like affirmations, and I don't mind affirmations, but affirmations are sort of like, it's like a statement that you want to be true, but you really don't believe it yet. Like, I am powerful. I am, whatever it is. And, I think those are great, but at the same time, a power statement is a statement that you believe to be true, and it's just much stronger. So, for example, an affirmation that a lot of times people say is, money comes to me easily and frequently.
Yeah.
And then typically what happens is the first time you make that statement, suddenly there's another thought that's like, well, no, it doesn't. Have you seen your bank account? And then suddenly the affirmation that you thought was going to be helpful for you turns into this cycle of doubt. So instead, I create what I like to call a power statement. So if I wanted to do something around money, instead, I would say something like, I give money purpose and fun, something like that. And because of that, money loves to come my way. And so that statement, even though it's very similar, it's strong and grounded. And I'm like, I know I absolutely, like, I have fun when I make money. I have fun when I get money. Like, I enjoy it. I give it purpose. I tell it what to do, and I give it the ability. I give it fun, right? And therefore, money enjoys to come to me. So that's one example of a power statement I've created for myself, where it's much stronger for me to, like, really feel strong and rooted in it. And it's much stronger than just, well, money comes easily and frequently, because, who knows if it actually does, but I absolutely know that I give money purpose and fun. And so that's kind of one example of how I would create a power statement around a new belief that I want to install for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's really about the energy and the wiring, right? Because if your brain doubts it, then it's actually rewriting it's continuously saying that old narrative, like, no, it doesn't. And it affirms doubt instead of where you want it to go. So I'm hearing, like, you want it to feel good in your body, resonate with you, and it has to be true. It has to be something you actually believe in.
Absolutely.
Which is amazing, because this is kind of where I wanted to, like, I was kind of like curious about this. It's like, how would you have a really cool system here about how to get these people who might be in the state start changing themselves. So you have to reposition yourself, reposition your service, and repositioning the actions, right? So this is a little bit more about repositioning yourself. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I talk about repositioning yourself, your services, and your actions. Once again, I primarily speak to entrepreneurs, business owners, course creators, et cetera, who are trying to figure out, like, why this isn't working for them. There's something that's just not clicking. They're either not making enough sales, or they're not making the sales at the price that they want to, or, they see someone else has a large audience. They're like, why isn't it clicking for me? And so this is more than just the practical of, like, create a funnel or create a better sales page, or, do social media, or whatever it is. It's more about the internal game. So when you reposition yourself, it is really more so understanding how you view yourself, because that's going to be reflected in your ability to charge not only what your services are worth, but also what you feel you're worth. And I love using the acronym MONEY to explain to people how this works, which is money, right? MONEY is my own natural energy yield, meaning the energy that I put out is only returned to me in the form of dollars. It's literally just digits on a screen. It is the manifestation of the energy that you're putting out. So generally once I speak with someone and they understand that, they're like, oh, all I need to do is keep my vibe high, keep my energy high. And then that's how I'm able to, attract the money that I want. And I'm like, yes. And that's just one part of the equation because we've got the other two, but that's essentially where it starts.
What's the other two equations?
Oh, so the other two are reposition your service and then reposition your action.
Okay. So yeah, so you gotta reposition yourself. So is this still like this conversation still about like finding your own worth? You know?
Yeah, it's not just finding your own worth, but also really learning how to make decisions and make strong and firm decisions. So a lot of the issue with some of the subconscious blocks is that they're actually preventing the decision-making process. So for example, the example I gave before with, I had the job offer and then I turned it down. Because of that subconscious block of addiction to struggle, I made a decision that wasn't in alignment with what I wanted, which was to get a job. And so if it was like, it's very clear, like you want a job, here's a job, but there was a block that prevented me from actually getting that end result. So that's what I mean about, really repositioning yourself. It's getting into alignment with what is it that you want and being really clear on that.
And then making choices in there. And I think that's like a huge part that we don't realize is, one, are you aware of the choice? Second, are you in alignment to make the choice that you want? And three, are you clear on what it is that you want?
Absolutely.
Actually, you have a really cool exercise for this. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I use an alignment exercise that has 8 simple questions. And the purpose of this exercise is to figure out, it's an easy way to make a decision. And the first thing is to ask, what do I want? And just be very clear on that. This is exactly what I want. The second question is, how will I know when I've got it? Because sometimes like we know what we want, but we don't necessarily take that next step to say like, how will I know when I've actually achieved this? Sometimes we put a carrot in front of ourselves and then we keep moving the carrot out and out and out.
Oh,
and so this is important. Yeah. To actually set that.
True.
Yeah, that's that. Third is, what are the benefits and consequences of going after this outcome? And if I go after this outcome and I accomplish what I set out to, what will I gain? And if I don't go after this outcome, what will I lose? So kind of like a simple like pros and cons tree, just like what are the pros, what are the cons, but not just in the benefit of having it, but like if I go after it, like if I actually choose to go after it. And then 6, I ask, all in all, is it worth it? So do the benefits outweigh the costs? Once again, simple pros, cons. And 7, what resources do I have available right now to help me accomplish this outcome? This is a really important one because often people will get through, the first 6 and then they'll stop because they say, well, I don't have the money or I don't have the time, which are kind of the 2 main resources. And so it's important to think about like, what resources do I have? When you learn how to ask the right questions, you'll also get better answers. So instead of saying, I don't have the time, the question would be, what time can I open up for this? And then you'll start to get a better answer. So once again, in this question, it's like, what resources do I have available right now to help me accomplish this outcome? And then the last one is sort of like a bonus question, and it's also a little bit of a trick question, which is, when would now be a good time to get started? And the reason that now is in the question instead of when would be a good time to get started, is like, when would now be a good time to get started? Because the answer is now. Like now is always the time to get started. And that's how you make a decision with those 8 simple questions.
That's really good. I'm actually going to try that myself because like I see so much benefit to it. And I really do believe in powerful questions like coaching, right? It really spurs it up. And all you really need is a good question. When would now be? Because oftentimes we get into analysis paralysis. I am definitely that definitely happens to me.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking, and you're like, what if, and you actually don't do anything about it. Because there is no perfect timing. I'm like, I'll do this when this happens. I'll do this when this happens, but then never we never get to that perfect place.
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay, how does this tie into, once you have an alignment, you know what you want, you have an alignment, you have some clarity about that. How does this relate to repositioning your services now?
Yep. So now that you know what you want, and generally a lot of that is figuring out, how to raise your rates, how to get to that point where you are charging what your services are worth. Generally, the next thing is to figure out, okay, how do I do this from a practical standpoint? And this is kind of where I start getting into the marketing, which is understanding how to reposition your services. And the example that I typically give to clients is the example of a plane, right? So a plane is absolutely going to get everyone to the same destination. If you book a flight from Atlanta to Charlotte, you're going to go from Atlanta to Charlotte, from Toronto to New York. That's where you're going to end up. However, there are different seats. You've got your, main cabin, you have your plus cabin, and on Delta, for example, they have Comfort Plus, and you got your first class or business class, or even the class with like the layback seats. And so when you think of it, you're like, yeah, that's what I like. Yeah. So when you think about that, you're like, well, what about the first class passenger? I remember when I was younger, I used to think like, why would somebody pay, 5 times as much to go the exact same distance? We're all on the same plane. Like, why are they paying so much more? And the answer is because they value the experience. So it's not just the utility of getting from one place to the next. It's also the experience. You get a dedicated flight attendant. Sometimes they come to you before the flight begins and ask you what you'd like to drink. You just get better service, higher quality service. And so with that in mind, you'll understand that when you're ready to raise your rates, you need to understand that low rates actually scare off that high quality client. And it's because they understand that with the higher price tag comes the better service. And so that's what they attribute the price tag to that higher ticket investment. And they want to pay more. The first class passenger wants to pay more. And therefore, they're always going to say no to what they don't want. So if this is the way that that this is preventing you from booking high quality clients at that, at your new increased rates, is because your marketing is confused. So it doesn't speak to your ideal client because you don't really know who you want as a client. You don't really know what to offer them. So you don't have like that really good offer that's going to speak to them. You don't know how to attract them or what to say to them. That's messaging. And you don't have a repeatable process for enrolling them. And that's a sales system. So ideal client, offer, messaging, and sales system. So if those pieces are confused, that's where you're confusing your potential clients. And a confused mind always says no.
Absolutely. Because then you confuse them and they don't really know. It's actually really interesting because I'm also a consultant here and I work with a lot of coaches, and a lot of them do have this ideal client as the first class. They want to pay that big price ticket. And it's oftentimes it's also people who can afford and pay for it and value it that much to want to pay for it. And they really struggle because they're just like, how do I find these kind of clients? How do I get these kinds of clients? How do I make this kind of money and stuff like that? And often they don't have a good branding, or they don't know how to present themselves. So that offer is really missing. Like, what do you have to say for the people who want to get to that level, but they're really struggling? And anything you've seen, because you're a consultant in this too, right? So.
Yeah, and I'll give away a little bit of the secret sauce now, but essentially what it looks like is you have to really have a really good filtering process in place, because once again, using that, first class passenger as an example, when you go onto the booking website, you can change the drop down and say, this is the class that I want, right? So you can filter through the seats and choose the specific seat that you want. But a lot of times with coaches, consultants, course creators, like what's happening is you're just presenting the first class seat to everyone because you're like, I want to charge more. So therefore, if you want to get on my plane, it's first class or nothing. And what happens there is you tend to leave other people in the dust who really need your help. Like they really need to go on the flight, but they're just not prepared to do it at that level. So Instead, what I do is I like to put I have a 4-step system, which we can talk about a little bit later, but essentially what it does is it just filters out. So for the people who want that first class experience, it will filter them in with the sales system. And then for the other people, we have other options for them. We've got a main cabin. We have, the Comfort Plus seats, and we have those options for them. So everyone has an opportunity to what I call get in where you fit in. So you're able to serve everyone, but you just maybe end up serving them at different levels.
Is it kind of like the similar when they have like the freemium model and like a low ticket item and a high ticket item, or is it different from that?
Yep, it's very similar in the sense that you can't deliver the entire package at a lower level, but it's important to understand that you can still create a really big impact at that level. And it gives people the opportunity, like if they want to come to my free live streams, I've got free live streams. If they want to purchase a lower ticket offer, I've got that. If they want to come and work with me at the highest level, I have that also. But when you do your marketing, you always want to start, it's easier to start at, market at the high ticket and then allow other people to filter in. The same way that if you ever look into like a travel magazine, you'll notice that there are a lot of luxury brands in there. Even if some of the people that are reading the magazines are not, wanting to or able to invest in a luxury brand, they're still in there. And that's because it's a lot easier to focus your marketing that way. And then obviously have your systems to work to bring everyone else in exactly where they need to come in.
That's really interesting because oftentimes we hear people like, okay, get your first audiences in and you build out your free stuff, your free content. Mm-hmm. Then you do your low ticket and then you build on top of it. And that's the opposite of what you're saying. You're saying go high ticket, go get the luxury item. And for those who can't get it, build the other stuff along the side. This is like, it's kind of like the opposite of that, usually what happens.
Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of people try that way where they try low ticket and going up and they end up going out of business before they have an opportunity to make an impact. And I've seen it. I've been doing this, like I said, since 2015. So I've been in this for a while and I'm tired of seeing it. And therefore, it's important to, put the processes in place that can not only help you sustain so you can stay in business, but then also start creating that base of income for yourself as well. So yeah, there's absolutely a process and a path for all of this. Yeah,
because it's hard when you are just out there churning and creating content and you're selling these courses for like, $120, $200 and it's not enough to sustain you. And then the energy balance is really like tips over. And that's why most people end up giving up actually, which is really interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. I love that. This is turning it a little bit on its head here.
Yeah.
I love this. So how does this relate to now the next place of like repositioning your actions?
Yep. So the third piece of the puzzle, once again, so reposition yourself, reposition your service, and reposition your actions. So repositioning your actions is really understand that nothing happens until you act. So I always say that a decision is not made until there's an action that follows it. So I'll say, dream what you're going to dream, then decide, and then do. Like you have to actually take action. And it doesn't just mean taking action just like, okay, I'm just going to go do something. But the exercise that I really like is I like to think about that next level version of myself. So for example, when I wanted to get to making $300K a year, I wrote in my journal, what does the $300K per year version of Latisha know that the Latisha today gets to learn, right?
Ooh, I like that.
Today. Not that I don't know, right? Because I'm always the same person, but what do I get to learn? So what does the 300K version of Latisha know that Latisha today gets to learn? And when I asked myself that question, it was just so clear of what I needed to do. I said, well, I shouldn't be, handling these things because when I'm at 300K, I have an assistant that's doing those things. So what did I do? I went and hired an assistant. Even if right now you're feeling like, well, I don't know that I have enough to hire an assistant, like 2 hours, whatever you're doing, you probably can hand it off. I personally like to eliminate, automate, then delegate. So eliminate the stuff that's not that you don't need to do, automate as much as possible with, software, and then delegate the rest. And, once I started doing that, I was like freed up, and I was able to go take on and do the next things. As I started, acting from that higher level version of myself, that's when I started creating my power statements. I wrote one in my journal every day. And, everyone has kind of like their own mindset exercises. I personally do like journaling, but I don't like write a book every day or like, journal, like diary journaling. I have a very specific thing. I write my goals. So I write my goal every single day. What is my goal for the year? Right now it's just a financial goal, but at one point it was financial, and then I also had a body goal and a relationship goal. Then I write out my inflows, so cash coming in, so sales, because that's like the main thing that I want to manifest. So sales yesterday, month to date, year to date, like even if it hurts to look at the numbers, I don't care. I still look at it because what gets measured and tracked gets managed, and it will grow. And I make sure that I'm also doing things in other areas of my life to support that effort. So the 6-figure, 7-figure version of me, I take care of my body. I take care of my relationships. I make sure that my husband's love tank is full. I'm like, hey, are you okay? You're good? Okay, great. And make sure that I'm still making an effort on the other areas of my life, because it's not just about business. It's not just about money. It's about enjoying the process along the way. And that's truly what I believe.
I think that's like probably one of the hardest parts in a lot of this, where people are struggling, like, especially that you coach a lot of high achievers, right? Mm-hmm. Tend to like all the other lifestyles like fall on the wayside here. But that is also part of like repositioning yourself. That's still about your worth, right?
Yep.
It's still about how you view yourself, because you're not a singular character, not 2D. You have a lot of facets to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very interesting. I actually had a question that like popped out of my mind when it came to repositioning your service, and I had a client in my mind who was just like, the question is around when you are going for these high ticket first class passengers, how do you actually attract them?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. So I'm going to try to say this as nicely as I can.
Yeah.
But like Delta doesn't send out books and say like, hey, do you want to be a first class passenger? Right? Like they don't have a process where they're like, let me go find these people. And the reason, and, I hesitate kind of use that as an example, because people are like, well, everybody has to get on a flight. But the point is that when this person knows what they want, they are going to go looking for it. And then when they end up finding you, you need to make sure your message aligns. So from a practical standpoint, what this looks like is obviously doing a search. Looking online, hashtags, asking people. I remember when I was looking for, someone who did legal services, I asked a friend like, hey, who do you know? And then they recommended someone. So that's like, you don't have to force finding those people. They're going to find you. You want to make sure that when they do find you, that your marketing is positioned well. And then, like I said, if you use the kind of the systems that I have set up, or just an example of like we bring multiple people in, the people who are the right ones will filter in and filter down through. And I can talk a little bit more about that if you want. I'm trying not to like, I'm a marketer, so I have to apologize if it seems like I'm trying to sell something. It's just natural. So.
No. We get that. You also have like, I mean, there's a webinar that you have that explains a whole system, right? That, anyone can join in for free. So like,
absolutely.
Anybody can join up. That we'll let you know. There's actually a link down in the description if you guys want to go check that out below there. That's excellent. It's like, yeah, you don't attract Delta with the wrong messaging. You got to speak the language. It's kind of what I was telling a lot of these people. I'm like, people who I've noticed, like people who I know who are at like the 6-figure level, especially the 7-figure level, they have a different set of problems in their life, similar to every human, but like at a different state in a way, And so kind of have to understand what their pain points are. You have to understand what they really need and be able to communicate that, you know, you're the best person to help them in what they need. And you got to just go out there and talk to them or understand it really to put that messaging in. Because they're not like, they may be like you, but not like me.
Yeah, there's a lot of like conversations you can have. You know, I like doing like little 20-minute like mini coaching sessions to ask the questions, you know, really doing like market research to figure out that conversation, that internal conversation that's happening in your prospect's mind. And then, you know, really putting out that content that's going to speak to them. And that's where your messaging really falls in.
Amazing. Yeah, that's true. That really comes down to that. That's just why copywriting is so expensive.
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like we have, you know, repositioning yourself, you know, that's really looking at your own self-worth, but also really making sure that there's an alignment in the choices that you make that are aligned with your worth and where you want to go. And correct me if I'm not getting these right here. And then you want to be able to position your services at that quality and that level of where you are at, where you're viewing yourself now, which is at that more elevated state, right? And I think this is the biggest part for here is like, you don't feel guilty, you don't feel shame, you don't feel any of that because, you know, like you're like, I belong in this first class lounge, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm actually glad that you said that. I want to touch on that a little bit because imposter syndrome is also another common subconscious block.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, especially because I often speak to new coaches, even though like they may have had years of experience, like in their full-time job or like even helping people informally. And there's just this belief or thought that because I love what I do and I enjoy it, I should just give it away for free, or I should just charge $120 an hour or have, you know, $120 course or whatever it is. And there's instead, there needs to be an understanding of the outcome that's being provided to the client, like the end game outcome. And, you know, if you can provide someone with the steps that's going to like save a marriage, like, you know how expensive divorces are, like that. I don't, and I hope I never do, but like, you know, that it's valuable if you can help someone. You know, obviously it's an easy one to think about, like earning more money. Yeah. But, you know, if you can help someone with their health and wellness, like imagine the amount of money that's saved on, you know, just pills and potions and doctors and all these other things. And, you know, obviously there's no need to make any sort of claims, but the point is that what you do is valuable. And until you can see the value from the outside looking in, you are going to have that imposter syndrome. You are going to have a hard time really determining like what your services are worth. And that it's really important to be able to do that.
I'm so guilty of that. I definitely remember having that when I first started off. And someone told me like, because you enjoy it and you're, you know, people love it, what you do, you find it weird to charge people for it. And they're like, if you change someone's life, how much is that worth? If you save somebody from, you know, on the verge of like a breakdown or, you know, depression, how much is that worth? And it kind of hit me. I was like, oh my God, right. How much is that worth? Yeah. That's really good. That's really good. I love everything that we've talked about here. And so like tying that back in, sorry, we just got a little derailed here, but I love that tangent because it is such an important conversation, especially for women and people of color, because there's just so much of other societal narratives that you know get constructed along with that keep that narrative down for all of us. So that's really good. And so when you have all of that, you have the system, you have who you are. The next part is to really nail and drill that in, is to actually do something about it. So it's almost like belief, transaction, belief.
I say dream, decide, do.
Oh, I love it. You have it already. You have it
Hang
already.
on, I'll show you. So that's my book.
Oh,
Dream,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Dream, decide,
Okay.
do.
Yeah, I was like trying to think of like I'm feeling something here. Okay, so you dream, you decide, and then you do. So the doing aspect is the part that really like integrates it, right?
Correct. It locks it in.
It locks it in. So you have to align your thoughts, because if you don't act from that place, if you're not making choice from that place, it's almost kind of like you don't really believe in yourself. You're not taking the steps for it, right?
Exactly.
Oh, I love that. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you and talking with you today. I think I've learned a few things for myself as well, which has been amazing. We have another section up here, though. It's called the hot seat questions. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, don't worry.
I'm a little nervous, but I'm ready.
It's not hard, actually.
Okay.
Actually, it's not hard. It's really for our audience. Some of our audience here, this is what other people are struggling with, right? Yep. So there are people here who have actually tried. They are working on their self-worth. They're doing the actions. They've changed their prices. They've done all the things, but it's still not getting the breakthroughs that they want. Like, what do you think is really happening there? And be real with us here.
Yeah. So the first thing I would do is, if I were having this conversation with someone, I would ask them just straight out, like, why don't you want it? And if that one question, like, ask yourself that one question, because once again, when you ask the right questions, you can get the right answers. Why don't I want it? Sometimes it might not feel safe to do it. For example, if you're like, I want to make a lot of money, but you feel like if you were to make a lot of money, you would have people around you with their hands out, then you might not feel safe to get a lot of money because you feel like you're going to have to give it away. And so therefore, that's something that's potentially blocking you. So why don't you want it? That's the main question I would have you ask yourself.
Why don't you want it? Yeah, because like as much as we work on the worth part and the actions part, there are still so many kinds of little beliefs that we've carried on. Like we have years of unlearning to do, right? Because we've lived there for so long. So you would kind of advise them to like go on that search. And this is like kind of the cue question.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Why don't you want it? Okay. Did you ever, now quick question, did you ever feel like giving up?
Yes.
You're like, how many times?
All the time. Recently when I first started, like every day I ask myself, and I'm like, is this really what I want to do? Because I truly believe that life is about finding and figuring out what you enjoy. And sometimes you don't enjoy doing something anymore. And so you need to kind of do like a temperature check and just check with yourself. So yeah, absolutely. I ask myself, and I often have asked myself, like, should I just give it all up? Especially when at the one time, like when I had left that job and I had to go back and get another job, I was just like, I'm just going to give up. It's not right for me. I'm never going to be a successful entrepreneur. I'm just average Latisha. I need to stop trying so hard. And, but I didn't. I decided not to. And I knew that it was going to be part of the way that part of my story. And it absolutely was.
You said recently.
Yeah. So
what happened there?
Yeah. So so I got to the point recently where it's addiction to struggle, right? So I got to the point recently where like things are just going really well. And I'm like, there's something in me that's like, well, is this really what I want to do? Right. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll just quit everything and just start something brand new. And I had to catch myself, and I'm like, no, that's your old patterns playing. You don't have to start something brand new. And I'm in my head like, well, this is not a challenge anymore. It's like, that's not true. There's still more that you want to achieve. But what you did that you figured out, that's not a challenge. But there are other things that are a challenge. You still haven't built a team yet. That's a challenge. So I'm like, basically, like I said, kind of catching that addiction to struggle and then saying, okay, I don't have to start over again. I just need to look at what I'm doing right now and figure out like, what's the challenge? Because I enjoy a challenge for sure.
Do you think there is some like underlying of like fear of success or fear of greatness that's happening around that?
Yeah. I think it's easy also in today's like online world because everyone has their opinions and people are keyboard warriors and they're willing to say whatever they want to say, especially on YouTube. There's the comment section in YouTube can be it can be loving, but sometimes it can just be, it's another day. And so, that's also something to consider, that fear of greatness. If I do get on this large platform and now everyone's looking at me, well, now I have to like be perfect. And the answer is I really don't. Like I can still, just be me.
Yeah, that comes up to my other question is like, what is your biggest fear?
Ooh. Actually, yeah. So I shared this in a conversation today. My biggest fear is that I will get there, right? And I won't have anyone to celebrate with. So it's kind of like a relationship type fear, and not from like a loving relationship type of thing. But just more so from, people to celebrate with, friends, people to congratulate me. I had this conversation with a coach a couple of years back, and she asked me that question. And it took me a while to come to that conclusion. And I was like, well, I just imagine myself like in a rocking chair with like all these stacks of money piled up against me. And then there's no one beside me. It sounds so sad.
It is. I often think about that too because I have a vision and a dream and passion that I would like to be working on too. And you hear this struggle about all these entrepreneurs doing everything, and like I hear all these things from people who are very old, like in their hundreds or 90s, and like, what's the biggest thing you regret? And they say things very simply. They're like, I wish I spent more time with people. I wish I didn't care so much about this, and that kind of like gets into my head.
Yeah. And you start thinking like that's what we focus on. Sometimes we focus too much on the things that are not important.
Yeah, and that's kind of why when you have that question with the alignment thing, I'm like, okay, I think I need to use this because I'm really at myself at like a little bit of a crossroads of something where something that has been with me for most of my like life, half my life, is now starting to feel like this dream is starting to shift, and I don't know if it's just where I'm at with my life or things are really shifting, and maybe I'm wanting something different and giving myself permission to be like, well, feel into it. Don't rush it, but feel into like maybe it is something else, and yeah. So that's what I took away. I was like, I've learned something today. I'm going to use it.
Yeah, 100%.
So if you could go back in time and talk to yourself before you started this journey, what words of advice would you give yourself?
Ooh. I would tell myself to fail faster.
Ooh.
And be okay with that. Even though I feel like I do a good job of putting myself out there. I still took a lot of cautious steps still. So honestly, I would, and how far back am I going? Like started my entrepreneurial journey or like college me, baby
Let's say
me?
like the beginning of like before you decided that this is what you wanted to do.
Yeah. So maybe that first time that I quit my job, the words of advice I would give myself is, number one, trust in yourself, charge more than you think you should, and work with people who are already on a moving train. So people who are already moving, which is, don't waste time trying to like push a rock up a hill. Like instead, like work with people who are motivated, basically, which is why like what I do now is like working with high achievers, like work with people who are like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to work. Tell me what to do and let's do it. And that's maybe too much advice, but that's the advice I would give myself.
Younger you is just like, I don't know what to do with this advice.
Right. I'm like, okay, well, fail faster then.
Fail faster, you'll learn faster. It's a hard one. I think like nowhere in school, like I was never taught to fail at all. It was just like success is like, you get on this like achievement train and then you're like, I don't know how to fail. And then you get like your one little failure and you're like, my life is ruined. And it is a muscle to build. I'll have to say that. It's definitely a thing that I've learned to like fail is now like, I'm just like, everything's play.
Yeah.
You're just playing. That's like the attitude I have right now.
Yeah. And what a lot of people don't understand is that success is like there's many paths to success, but getting there, you have to actually cut off what is like the non-right paths, right? And so, the further you go down a path before you realize, well, I got to turn back around, the longer it's going to actually take you to get to where you want to go. So instead, if you can like, all right, let's sprint to the end, not working, go back, sprint to the next part. And it's kind of like a mental image I have for myself, which is like, as soon as you want to do something, like, let's do it, let's go all out. let's evaluate and see what happened. Okay, great. Now we can reiterate, iterating and come back from there and improve.
Literally what we tell everybody when they're course creating. Just get it out fast, get feedback. You're like, fail fast, learn faster. Like everyone's like taking forever to do like the perfect video. And we're just like, okay, we don't even know if people want that course yet.
Exactly.
What was it? Done is better than perfection, right?
Yeah,
Done is better than perfect. Sorry, that's the one. Yeah.
That's my guiding compass. Get it out there. There's 2 words. So you can be effective or you can be efficient, but you cannot do both simultaneously. So I've always tried to be effective first, like let's get it out there, first thing. And then I'll go back and now let's be efficient. Let's tweak it, fine tune it. Now we can make the slides. I'm not going to make the slides the very first time that I do it. I'm going to put it out there. I'm just going to talk it through and then I'll make the slides and then maybe I'll re-record it. And so there's definitely a process to success, I believe.
I like that. Effective first, then efficient second. It's almost how we do all our work here. Thank you so much, Latisha, for joining us for here. I really enjoyed our chat today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. This was fun. I feel like I rambled just a little bit, but hopefully there's some good golden nuggets.
No, that's perfect. That's actually, that's the whole joy of interviewing here is just like letting ourselves flow right this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Now, if you guys here who are watching today feel like any of this resonate for you and you realize that this is what you need to do, take a look at her training. She's got this 4-step client gaining system. Sorry, I just like fumbled on that so hard. 4-step client gaining system. Click the link below in the description. There are some content there to help you reposition yourself and your actions. You also have a YouTube, right? So there's a YouTube every Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In this YouTube channel, she's got a lot of practical tips for your coaching business, for anything that has to do with digital products. And in these workshops, you will actually be doing things on top of those practical tips. The link is also down below. Now, if any of this resonated with you, give this video a big thumbs up, like, and subscribe to this channel for more expert talks. I'm Melissa. See you guys in another episode. Have a great day.